to Two Roads Crossing, a podcast production of the Christian Veterinary Mission. Do you wonder how your faith fits together with your profession? Well, join us as we explore how to live well at the intersection of two roads crossing.
Well, hello and welcome back to Two Roads Crossing, a podcast production of the Christian Veterinary Mission. My name is Barry Schwenk. I'm a licensed veterinarian and ordained minister and your host for the next half hour as we discuss the intersection of faith and vocation, specifically veterinary medicine. And it always has interested me when we talk about faith and veterinary medicine, that one of the places where those two things collide is in international missions. And for people who are listening, if you are a veterinarian or a student who is coming into the profession, maybe that's crossed your mind, but maybe you're struggling with understanding how that transition actually happens. And so today we're joined by Doctors Laurie and John Day, who after 29 years of owning and operating their own dairy exclusive practice in Idaho, decided to make the jump to Mongolia. And I want to know why. And maybe you want to know why too. And really the first question that I have is why 29 years? Why not 30 years? It's going to bug me that it wasn't 30 years. But hey, it's great to have both of you here. Welcome. So let's start maybe in this place. You all met at vet school, is that right?
Yes. Laurie was a year away from, or had just applied for vet school and was up at just started, and we were working in the mastitis lab. And I was at that time a sophomore in vet school, and then we actually started dating the following summer after that. So she had was the summer before her freshman year in vet school and the summer before my junior year in vet school.
And apparently it wasn't an utter disaster.
No, but it isn't utterly romantic either.
Oh, John, you smoothie. That's so good. So that was at UC Davis, right? Because
Yes.
you were both originally from California, is that right?
Yes.
All right. So at the end of vet school, you all made a move up to Idaho. Was that always the plan, Laurie, from vet school? Had you all talked about that to make that move, or what was it that drew you to Idaho?
My brother's 12 years older than me, and so he went through vet school 12 years ahead of me. He had started dairy practice down in Ontario, California, and then moved up to Idaho in the early 80s and was getting to where he actually had married into a dairy, and so was kind of shifting focus a little bit and looking to transition out of practice. And we knew, we had visited up there while we were both still in vet school and knew we really liked the area and wanted to go up there. And so then after I graduated, he had offered what was left of his practice at that point to us. And so we made the move up there.
It was a nice transition, made it a little bit like having a little bit of direction, because not everybody has a lot of direction going out of vet school, so that's kind of a good thing. Now, were both of you believers at the time that you were in vet school?
Nominally.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you said nominally, you were looking at John specifically. Was that,
No.
was that intentional or?
No, that was both of us. I was raised in the Presbyterian church, occasionally going. We went on Easter usually, and sometimes Christmas, and whenever Dad had to usher. And I did go to Christian, like a outpost camp type of thing when I was 12, and really learned more about Jesus' sacrifice for my sin and accepted him at that point as my savior, but still wasn't going to church or getting real involved. We lived far away from town and whatnot. And so, really was not following closely until quite a time after we got married, actually. Yeah. So.
And were you kind of in the same boat, John?
Yeah, I was raised, my mom was Catholic, my dad was an atheist, and mom got tired of fighting the battle of why do we have to go to church and dad doesn't, when I was about 10 years old, and in college, both in undergrad and in vet school, there are numerous attempts to go back to church, but they would last 1 or 2 weeks, and then all the other things that were going on got in the way. And even in our when we were first married, we started having kids, we were making an attempt to try to start to go to church, and we would go for a while, 1 week or 2 weeks, and then between one of the kids getting sick or the call of the mountain to go skiing, we let it slide. And it wasn't until about 2003 that we really felt that God has a lot bigger call on our life than what we've ever given him credit for. And at that time, we gave our life to Christ and moved on from there as we started to develop a relationship with him.
Yeah, that's a real transition, because at that point, you all had already been owning and running this practice for a while, and you had kids at this point in time. And how many kids did you have at that point?
We had all three of our kids.
All three of them. Okay.
Yeah.
How did they respond to that transition for you?
That wasn't too bad. Even our oldest one, didn't buck us as far as going to church on Sundays when we decided that this was what we do on Sundays. And so the church had a good youth group with a lot of kids his age that he knew. He was going. All three of our kids went to a Christian school from starting about 3 years old until 5th or 6th grade. We knew we wanted them to learn the Christian values. And it was part of that, going to that Christian school, that was so instrumental in actually us coming to the realization that God had a lot bigger claim on our lives than what we had been giving him. When Austin came back and was telling us stories of people in the Bible that we thought we knew, of a Bible that we thought we knew, and we're going, who's that? Then we started to realize that we were not in a good place, and we needed to kindle that relationship, and God just drew ourselves to him. The prodigal son comes to mind, of God coming running to us as we're coming back from our pigsty.
Well, and it's funny how that happens. I mean, we sometimes, and it's always interesting to me just to hear people's faith journeys, because rarely do you ever hear about anyone having the exact same faith journey. So it's always fun to listen to those transitions, and to go through it together as a family is a big thing. And so even hearing how God was using, and it's funny how God kind of instilled within both of you the idea that you wanted your kids to have those values, and then God said, I'm going to use them to rope you back in. So it's almost as if he knows what he's doing. So that's pretty good. So Laurie, how did you all get connected to CVM then? Because there was some connection. I mean, before you went as full-time missionaries, there was a connection. So how did that happen, and how did that evolve?
So John had gone to a bovine practitioners meeting probably around, I think it was around 2004. It was one of those times that I stayed home with the kids, and he went by himself. And so he went to the CVM breakfast at that meeting, and got acquainted with the organization, and I think somebody was speaking about short-term missions to Bolivia at that particular time. And so he got kind of excited and came back home and was talking about this. And we thought, you know what, that'd be really cool, and we could do this and serve it. And we know like this much Spanish. So we applied for the short-term mission pool, and thinking, okay, Latin America somewhere. And so then, you apply to the short-term mission pool, and then they start sending you announcements of upcoming trips and service opportunities. Well, the very first one that came in was Gerald Mitchum sending us something about Mongolia. And it's like, okay, yeah, no, we're going to Latin America. Okay, where's the next one? And a couple of weeks later, I just noticed something from Africa. I don't know. And so not really anything from, and then Gerald sent again. He goes, well, I don't know if you got my first email or not, but we always have the, okay. Just send us information. And we had to go look it up. It's like, where is this place? We don't even know. Like when we talk to people, it's like they're thinking, where is it? Like Africa or something? It's like, no, it's Middle Asia. So we had to go look that up, and he sent some information. We're like, well, we could maybe do that, and prayed a lot about it, and I was just really, I guess I was afraid of. I'm a perfectionist by nature. I'm cursed.
Yep.
It's a curse, but anyway. So I'm afraid of making a mistake. And so I just was like, oh, is this what we're supposed to do? Is this what we're supposed to do? And in one of my times where I really, this is one of the few times I really felt, not like an audible voice of God, but really felt like God speaking in my spirit saying, I didn't say go to Africa or go to Asia. I said go into the world, and said, okay, I'm going to take that to mean that one location is as good as another. This isn't going to be making a mistake, and that we should just take, good opportunity, fits our skills, and then we should go. So that was our first short-term opportunity in the fall of 2006. Just the two of us went, figuring I'm going to be enough of a basket case. I didn't really want to have to deal with the kids at that time. So, and it was a great 3 weeks, wonderful, just a wonderful experience. We broke an axle out in the middle of nowhere, and anyway, the subsequent to that, it was really interesting. This little teeny village that we got stuck in for about a couple extra, actually about 5 days altogether, I guess, within a year, that almost that whole town had come to Christ. Just there had been a little old lady pray for, she'd heard about Jesus, she'd accepted him, but she needed to learn more, and had prayed for somebody to come and teach her more. And that was, God answered her prayer with a broken axle. And during the time that we were there, we had, what was it? She came, and then there was like 3 other people came to Christ on that trip. And anyway, so God moved there, and it was so amazing that we came back and thought, we really need to get our kids to experience the mission field. And so in 2009, we went back for a much shorter experience, but they were 15, 12, and 9 at the time. Wow. And we did a summer school trip with them.
That's a good reminder too, because sometimes when we think about missions, whether it's short-term or long-term, we oftentimes think about how we think about it like we are taking Jesus to people. When in reality, he's already there, and he's already working. And so he's going to use you just to kind of accent what he's already doing, and probably is going to use that to sow as much into your life as it was into her life too, to realize that God can use you in this kind of powerful way.
And the reality of that whole trip was that we were bystanders watching God at work rather than being a part of what God was doing, other than just getting a chance to be a witness.
And that's the thing, is that that first step of just go. And I think that you hit that right on the head, is just go. And as veterinary professionals, I think CVM does a really nice job of providing those kinds of opportunities where if God's tugging on your heart, all you have to do is go to cvm.org and look at short-term missions and get signed up. And before you know it, you could be in Mongolia too. So that's a good thing. Well, then tell me this, John, because so you all had the short-term experience, which was probably a pretty powerful one. When did the idea about long-term missions start to come into the conversation for you all?
The first talk of long-term missions was after we had gone the first time, and I would use it to poke fun at the kids, and I could get a good rise out of our son by making the suggestion that we're going to move to Mongolia. But the reality is when we were truly serious about it is when our youngest went off to university, and we were looking at becoming empty nesters, and we're sitting and asking God, okay, what do you have for us now in this new chapter of life? What do you have for our marriage? What do you have for our business and our career? And what do you want us to be doing? And the short course was coming on up, and we had been to short course numerous different times, and had always done the workplace ministry track or the short-term mission track. And I made the suggestion to Laurie, well, why don't we do the long-term track and see what that's all about. And she looked at me like I was half crazy.
Mhm.
And but I said, we had talked to the folks at CVM, and they said it is everybody that comes, they're just looking at exploring the idea of what that looks like. And so Laurie agreed, and we went with our hands open wide to what God would put into our hands, and we were able to hear about what it really meant to was involved in doing long-term missions, the deputation, the developing a group of senders behind you, developing your prayer letters, and what it means to let go and move it cross culturally. And as we were going through that, they were also presenting us with different opportunities from different folks who were coming up and sharing what they were doing, and telling about some of the different opportunities. And Kit actually came on up and he said, well, he said, I think Mongolia actually is starting to have some dairy work that they are looking for some expertise in. And we got to put Mongolia on our hearts, but clear back in 2006, and this is now in 2018. And we go, huh. And so we went back home and started praying about it, and and talking it over, and having discussions with God by ourselves and together about the whole idea of picking up our stakes and moving our tent someplace else.
Oh, and so there are a couple of things that you mentioned there that we may have to elaborate on, just for listeners who may not be as familiar with CVM. First, let's talk about short course. And there was a time where short course was primarily was a gathering time once a year, and you could take these various tracks: workplace ministry, short term or long term. I believe that as time has gone on, we've seen short course kind of evolve to where it's almost entirely focused on long term missions. But folks think, and kind of rightfully so, that you have to be ready to sign on the dotted line to go, and that is not the case. Did you expect that was the case, Laurie, when when he said that, let's go to the long-term track? You're like, wait a second, slow down.
Well, because every time that we had gone to short course when they used to be outside of Kansas City, and you'd go and say, we'd be in these other tracks, and then like those long-term people would be like sequestered, over by themselves, and it was like, and some of the people we recognized or knew, and then that person ends up going, and then that person ends up going, and not everyone, but I mean, it's like those were the serious people, right? And that they were, and so. And no, not all of them went, and so no, it is set up to be just exploratory, but. Yeah, from my perspective, you're watching, they were always, doing stuff, separate by themselves. They did after worship, they'd all go, and so it's kind of like, these are the really like the red hots,
Don't let them talk to anybody, or else they're gonna change their mind. Is that how?
But no, anyway, so yeah, no, it felt like that was more the people that had already, fairly serious about going, and but no, Brad was very good to show. Oh no, there's lots of people. It's just come and ask questions and whatnot. And so, and it was geared very much that way. And the people that were with us in that particular group, there's several that are on the field now. There's several that didn't or haven't done. So it's just come and ask. But now this year we went to short course. A little smaller, they changed it up a little bit, so a little smaller group that was focused on long term, but then we had some other people there that were still kind of looking at short term and kind of a mixture. So
well, and it's kind of nice because with the new CE conference in Nashville, there's a bit more opportunity for a more robust workplace and even short term courses, but it's still necessary because how would you say, what are some of the big things when you walked away from the long-term track of short course? What were some of the things that really hit you, that really helped to start to shape this idea that God was really calling us to that place? Or do you remember?
Well, I mean, just like that, some of the things, it's like, oh, well, that's not as difficult as what I thought. I mean, just some of the practical nature of some of the things that you need to do, like building your team and those types of things, and working off of deputation, getting the donations and people, supporters behind you. But then also, of course, Fred Van Gorkum, really good about just that whole idea of like, really, we're all told to go.
Mm.
It's more of are you sure that you've been told to stay?
Right.
Kind of what it is. And then also, if we just sit here and wait, okay, God's going to tell me, drop it on my head to go. It's like, if you ever tried to steer a car when it's parked, it's really difficult to do anything. But if you start moving, it's much easier to get going. And so we really kind of felt that spoke to us a lot about, we just kind of kept feeling it. And again, this time we didn't feel like go, from God, go, or anything like that. It just was just kind of a general, there'd be a sermon and then, talking about the Great Commission or something that just, Isaiah, here am I, send me. And you're just kind of, these things that just kind of kept coming up, just kind of that gentle nudge, go, go. And, but nothing specific, and so we just thought, we're just gonna start moving that way. And God is perfectly capable of turning us or shutting the door or whatever, but we're going to start moving in what we feel or we think that he's telling us to do. And so I called it an Indiana Jones from the Last Crusade, when he get the leap of faith, he puts his hand over his heart, closes his eyes, and just steps out over the abyss. And that's kind of what I felt like we were doing. It's like, we're going to just start moving this direction, and God, we're going to trust you, and we're asking you, please either open the path or shut it down or turn us to the right or to the left if we're messing up. And it just was, it just felt like doors would just kept opening up for us to go, and things changing in our own heart to make it possible for us to give up our home and things and make that.
How was that, John? How was that from a practice perspective? Because here you've poured blood, sweat, and tears into this thing for almost 3 decades. How was that transition? How did God walk you through that?
Well, one of the things God did was that we had a group of 9 dairymen that I was working with at that time. And in that year that we were discerning about going, 4 of them sold out. And so, and it was the beginning of a progression of smaller guys getting bought out by bigger guys. And so it was God showing us that what we thought was going to be a comfortable retirement, a slow glide into retirement, knew these guys were at some point would be selling on out, but they were selling out a lot sooner than we thought they would. And so there was that. And there was there was some toughness. It was tough in some places because it was funny. We'd be driving down the road. We were it was after we had close to practice. We were getting ready to, we're taking stuff to sell it to different people, and we're taking the vet box to somebody to sell it, and driving down the road. And the identity that I had of driving that truck with a vet box in the back, and realizing that in a few hours we're going to pull that vet box out, and the truck no longer had a vet box, and I wasn't going to have that trailing behind me. I started to realize where my identity lied and where my identity should lie. And it's one of God's ways of taking away, if you would, maybe a little bit of an idol there. That pride of being a veterinarian and being recognized in the community as a veterinarian.
Yeah, that's a tough pill. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing on that, with the practice kind of basically going away completely, it's just that idea of leaving a legacy or having something, that if we were to come back and something to come back to, it's not there. And that wasn't the important thing is what, our identity in Christ. So it was like, things that we were kind of, oh, look what I made, it's like, look at my little thing here I made. Yeah. It's like, well, no, it's God's anyway. So,
and we try to have those tethers too. Like there's we'll just go, and then if we don't really like it, then we'll come back. And yet there's that scary feeling of faith when that net is pulled out from underneath you. And
I likened it to what Cortez did when he brought the Spanish forces to Mexico, and then he said, "Burn the boats."
Yeah.
So
that's it. That's about right. You burned every last one of them. You took the vet box out first, so that's always good.
right.
Well, I really appreciate you talking about this, because the the transition, and for folks that are listening, I appreciate understanding this idea of just getting the car rolling. And if we are really all called to go, we really have to be confident that God has actually said, no, never mind, you can stay. But what does that mean for each and every one of us? And that particular journey, and discerning that as you begin to reach out, everything from short-term missions to reading newsletters and prayer letters from other missionaries, and then ultimately, going to something like a short course and long-term missions inquiry, that as you make yourself available to God, then God will certainly use you for his good purposes. So I really appreciate you both joining me today, kind of explaining your transition, and maybe for some folks that are listening that maybe, I don't know, maybe God's poking their heart a little bit, and the idea of missions is swirling around. It might be a good idea for you to get in the car and move it along a little bit, and see what God would have with your life as well. So hopefully, as you listen to Doctors Laurie and John's story about their confirmation and their calling, hopefully that impacts your heart and speaks to you and encourages you as well. And through their story, we can learn how to live well at the intersection of two roads crossing.
Thank you for listening to Two Roads Crossing, a podcast production of the Christian Veterinary Mission. If you were blessed by this content, like and subscribe so that you are alerted when new content is released. If you would like more information about CVM, or if you have questions, comments, or topical suggestions, you can find us online at www.cvm.org. Or you can contact us by emailing podcast@cvm.org. God has a plan for the nations, and that plan includes you. We pray that CVM has encouraged you to live out your calling with confidence and competence. So, until next time, may the voice of the shepherd ring loud and clear as you follow him in faith to the intersection of two roads crossing.